Ujamaa Community Bookstore in Indianapolis makes you smile. From books to products, musical acts, and poetry readings, people of all ages and backgrounds also gather for enlightened conversations. My father and I were invited last year for a discussion about our children's book, The Brightest Star. I never imagined that I would be asked to return in another advocacy role to talk about workplace abuse.
As a journalist, we're in the business to hold people and institutions accountable, and that's what we're doing. And so I want to thank you all for being here. We're going to have, if many of you may not know that I do a YouTube show called My Silence Is Not for Sale. And that phrase came about because after I made the notification that I had dropped the lawsuit and I put it on LinkedIn, literally, God just said, my silence is not for sale. And I wrote that as a hashtag. And it just hit me because what they were wanting me to do was to remain silent in exchange for money. Mm-hmm. It's not for sale. Anything that I have, anything that God has given me, I can't just give it to you and take money and walk away and still not be able to tell the truth. The truth will set us free. And for me, being able to talk about my experience has literally given me a freedom and a liberation that I never expected. And every single day, it gets better and better and better. And I continue to meet wonderful people like Kelly Wilkerson, who's here today. She has experienced workplace bullying as well. And I wanted her to speak. I want us to have just a conversation about her experience because I want people to understand that it is real. And so many people don't believe that it's a real systemic issue in the workplace. And I want people to know that I'm the face of it, she's the face of it, maybe you are, but I want you to know that there's hope. There is hope, and there is power in numbers. And the more of us continue to talk about this, the more of us continue to not remain silent and to join this collective movement that is happening in this nation right now as we speak. Very briefly, In Workplace Abuse started about 10 years ago by two women. One worked for a major company, another worked for another company, and they experienced it and they said, you know what, this is just kind of like sexual assault, but we're talking about the assault of the mind. The assault of our minds. Every single day, 76 million people are going through workplace bullying every single year. 30% of those people are dealing with it every single day. So if so many people are being affected by it, why are we not talking about it? That's my question. Why are we not talking about it? Why did I just find out about workplace abuse 4 years ago? Why are we not talking about it? Well, now we are. Now we are. And I say we need a bullhorn and a megaphone because the power that we have as a people, as a collective, to change it is on the horizon. I feel it. I feel it. So we're not talking about just making changes here in the state of Indiana. We're also talking about federal law. And I keep saying briefly, and I'm not being brief. As y'all can see, I like to talk. The Civil Rights Act doesn't protect us. I don't know if you guys know that. Have y'all ever thought about that? It doesn't. If you file a discrimination lawsuit that has any racial component to it whatsoever, the two things that you have to prove are, one, intent. Intent is very difficult to prove, which is why when you think about it, you don't really hear a lot about discrimination lawsuits because very few people can prove the intent. They've made it difficult for us as people of color to prove what we know is real, which is racism. We know it. But they have decided, the federal government says, well, there are only two ways that you can prove racism. They've called you the N-word, or they put a noose on your desk. Absent those two things, you can't prove intent. The laws need to change. The nuances in the microaggressions of racism, we need to make sure that the laws are up to date so that it really does protect people. To try to make sure that this Workplace Psychological Safety Act is passed, not just here in Indiana. It's already it's gone to one level, I believe, in Massachusetts. Rhode Island is now beginning to look at it. But we need to also have this in Indiana as well. So we are encouraging all of you all to make sure that you talk about this. You log on to the EWA website and learn more about it, learn how you can become involved with us as part of End Workplace Abuse, the Indiana chapter. And I will tell you that there are hundreds, thousands of people around this country right now who are part of this organization who are very clear that time is of the essence to make a change, and the time is now. And so we would love for you all to join us as well. I want to introduce Kelly Wilkerson, who, as I mentioned, is unfortunately a victim of workplace bullying. One, I want to say thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
What made you decide to join EWA, first off?
You.
Oh, okay.
Up until, well, I just realized that I've been experiencing this for over 20 years, different places that I've worked. And I always thought it was me. I'd said to my husband, to my mom, what am I doing wrong?
What am I doing wrong?
I'm a hard worker. I've done this, I've done that. I've got to work for this, I got to work. What am I doing that is so wrong? And my husband, Cal, I don't know. I don't know. So I'd leave, go to another place. And over the years, and again, didn't realize it, it was affecting my health.
In what way?
I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune disorder, inflammation. And it got to a point where I went to a naturopath doctor. I was working with, a Western medicine doctor. Couldn't do anything. And I was just, with me, it's just, I was gaining weight, my hair is falling out, and we couldn't figure it out. I started having signs of a heart attack, and had a full workup, and my functional medicine doctor, she said, I think maybe you should talk to your therapist about what's going on. And so, at that point, I guess I kind of had like a mini breakdown, and the place where I was working, I went out on leave, and I was experiencing it. It just had reached that point. I was at that breaking point. And my therapist said something, she's like, it's abuse. I'm like,
Same thing happened to me. I was like, what?
Abuse? No. I'm like, no.
Because when we think about abuse, we're thinking about physical abuse, right?
Right. And I'm like, no, it's just, no. Not. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, well, yeah, I guess so. And then it was a God thing. I saw a post on, I think it was LinkedIn. It was either LinkedIn or Facebook. And I remember messaging you on LinkedIn. And I'm thinking, she's a big lady. She's not going to answer my DM, And I thanked her. I said, thank you for being the voice of people who are afraid and aren't strong enough to do so like myself. Thank you for being my voice. And then it just started, and fast forward, I'm unemployed right now, but again, I think it's a God thing because I found out I needed to heal. And that's, I've been doing a lot of self-reflection and just looking at things. I'm like, oh my gosh. Even when I was still living at home, because I'm from Pittsburgh, my family's from Pittsburgh, and we moved here, I guess, about 27 years ago. But when I graduated from college, my first job, and I'm in clinical research, but I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, I remember my manager throwing a blood sample at me.
Wow.
And at the time, I was just engaged to my husband, and I'm like, oh, she just tossed it across the thing. He's like, no. That's a throw, and it is dangerous because it is blood.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, no. And then, and again, didn't realize it then. Then I was blessed with a wonderful job with a wonderful, wonderful mentor. And, but then it would go up, it'd go down, up and down. Then my husband and I, we got married, so I moved from Pittsburgh So I had to leave that job. And again, it was just up and down, up
Roller
and down.
coaster.
It was a roller coaster,
Yeah.
yeah. And I didn't realize it. What am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And I'd leave an employer, and then I see someone that I worked with that wasn't performing at the same level as I did, but they're way up here, and I'm,
Right, you're going, what's going on?
what's going on? Like, what
am I not doing?
Yeah, like,
Right,
what am I missing? What am
Right.
I missing? And, but again, everything happens for a reason. I got to the point where I did for a reason. Even coming here today, I said to my husband, I said, honey, I'm still looking for a job. He's like, yeah. I said, this is going to be out there. I'm out there. I'm going to be out there now.
Yeah. Like I'm public.
Right. And I said, so that may hinder my ability to get a job because people may see me as that person. And my youngest daughter and my husband both said, well, that's not a company that you want to work for then.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but my husband said, but nothing.
Yeah.
The Lord has always provided for
always
us.
provided.
He always will provide for us.
Amen.
So this is happening for, and I truly believe everything that I've gone through, that I've experienced even within my family, and I could go on with healthcare and just so many different things. It's all happened for a reason. And so I feel like I'm getting myself back. Because I used to walk into a room and I was that.
I was that girl.
I'm
that chick.
right?
Yeah.
And not that I was trying to put on airs or anything.
No, but we're confident.
But I was confident.
Yes.
And I know what I know.
That you
what I
know.
know. And I always said, Lord, I'm not going to step on anyone's back.
Right.
Because I know you're going to
You're gonna
elevate me to where I'm meant to be. And I, again, would see people getting whatever. Oh, yes, pat on the back, da-da-da.
You're like, wait a minute.
Really? And so, yeah, I just, but then I got knocked down, got knocked down, not realizing it. My voice got smaller and smaller because I was, of course, I got you're just very passionate when you speak, and you need to soften. And I'll never forget, I was working at a company, and I was pulled aside by the head of the department, and he said, you are very knowledgeable, you're very poised in your appearance, and you're very professional, and you're always ready. But your colleagues see you as being standoffish, cold, and arrogant, and you need to change the way.
I had that conversation too. I had a news director who told me the very same thing. They just want to know you more. If you just share more about your personal life.
Yes, I was told.
I go, but I'm not here to be their friends. I'm here to do a job.
Right, yes. I was told to ask, I know you probably know the answer, but ask them a question that, just to make them feel like you. And
these are real stories. This happens.
This
happens.
And when you do have to ask for something, instead of just going right into it and say, hey, how was your weekend?
Yeah.
How did it, and then ease into it. I'm like, okay. I mean, yeah.
You're in clinical research, right?
Yes.
Explain what that is exactly.
Clinical research, I can get on my soapbox about this. Clinical research, I know, has a bad rap in the African American community. But clinical research is research that's done, and there's multiple phases of it, to ensure that medications, before they're on the market, that they are proven to be safe and effective. My thing was to diversify the enrollment into these studies, because there are so many drugs out there that are mainly tested on Caucasians, and they don't work the same for us.
That's right.
And we'll never know that unless we have a more diverse population participate in clinical research trials. And the funny thing is, it was that wonderful job after the lab job, and it was, my manager was tall, Caucasian, from Iowa. Breast cancer is my specialty. And we went to a hospital to look at a patient's chart. It was a African-American woman. And she came, but it was too late. And I said, why did she wait so long? And he said, kiddo, because she didn't know. The only reason why she came, because her tumor, it had become gangrenous. Oh, God. And she couldn't stand the pain. She didn't know that there was a such thing as clinical research, that she could have been getting at least the standard of care without charge, and it may have saved her life. And you know, when I moved on, I mean, he was like, he would always tell me to, you know, tell your kids Uncle Larry said hi. And that was his mission. And at that point, because I said to him, I said, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that this doesn't happen. Yeah. But still to this day, it's happening. My husband just lost an uncle a couple of years ago, who's an educated man, entrepreneur, college degree, upper middle class, and he had lymphoma. And he was kind of at the last. They didn't know he tried everything. My daughter, my oldest daughter, who's in science, we both went and we started looking for research studies. She found one, told him about it. He presented it to one of his doctors, who was a principal investigator for the study. Wow. Why didn't you offer this to him? Yeah. Why didn't you say something? And he got on the study, but it was too late. And it's like, you had it right here in your hand. Yeah. And you didn't offer it. They're not even offering it to us. So it's just, you know, and I'm sorry, and it's not about clinical research, but it's just, it's so important. It's important for our health. Yeah. You know, it's a way that they're killing us because we are not, or we're being prescribed medicines that don't work, that aren't as effective. And so, you know, I want to try to change that thinking, and even still with that, because that's the thing now, because the FDA is making a requirement that companies have a diversity plan in place. There's some, you know, oh, well, my study started before this happened, or my, you know, no, this is needed. Yeah. And a lot of times you can talk to your blue in the face, you can go out to the communities, you can educate, but if the doctors aren't offering it to their patients, and if we don't get more principal investigator, the principal investigator is a physician who is conducting the study. And if the physician doesn't look like the population that you're trying to reach, that's a problem too.
That's a problem, yeah.
And so to me, it's a overt.
Would you call it intentional?
I would want to say no. But in my husband's uncle's case, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you say something? And even then, because we went to Pittsburgh to help take care of him, and I know all the lingo and everything, so I, you know, go and to be with him as an advocate and everything. And I remember saying to the physician, I said, well, now he was just released from the hospital. Shouldn't he have weekly blood draws
Right.
to test his levels? Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I can, yes, you're right. I'm not a physician,
And you know that.
but I know that.
Right.
Because the first time we went to the hospital and his levels were low, and I'm like, well, Uncle Joe, aren't you getting lab? Well, no, because I'm looking at his, all the his appointments, and I'm like, there's no labs on here.
Wow.
So once I said that, then he had to start to go for weekly labs. Why?
As you're just talking about that situation, it's really the foundation or an example of not being seen, not being heard, and our lives not mattering and not having any value. That's what this is about.
It is.
Because even I'm sure during your experience with workplace bullying, and I can speak for myself, I had everything. As a journalist, I have everything written down. I had emails, I had voicemails, I have video, I have text. They have all, because I'm not hiding anything. Here's the information. Gladly give it to you. And literally, it was looking in my face and saying, we don't believe the facts. We don't believe this video. We don't believe what you're saying is true. We don't believe what you're saying is true. There was a question my attorney actually said during the deposition. So some of the black people who worked there, who saw it and have given kind of statements, if you will, and you don't believe them, but you believe all of the white people.
Let me
Why?
And
she just sat there.
I went to a site, and it ended up being me auditing the site. Egregious offenses. I'm writing them down, and we had fax back. I'm faxing them back to the office, because this was in a different state. And come to find out, when I got back to the office, the administrative assistant, who was a person of color, said they didn't believe you. I said, what?
That's it. Yeah.
She said, yeah, the lead came to me and said, do you really think this is real? Why would I lie?
Right.
This is you're talking FDA, government,
Yes.
Why would I lie?
What motivation do I have to not tell the truth? Right.
No, the quality assurance department, they were happy with the work that I did, so much so they didn't have to go out. That site was audited by the FDA. The FDA did not find anything more than what I found. There was another incident where, and unfortunately, we had to report an investigator to the FDA, and one of the medical directors said, is she on a witch hunt?
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, I'm doing my job.
Yeah, yeah.
And I am darn good at it. I'm saving your tail, because if this stuff goes on and you submit to the FDA and they find out later on, this could trash
Yes.
your submission.
You're like, I'm helping you.
I'm helping you. And that's all I've done. It's like I have given 120% always, to the detriment of my health,
Yes.
my family.
Yes.
And this is real. This is what I get. And that was the hardest thing. As a woman of color, we think, they're not going to break me. I can do this.
I can do this, yeah.
I can do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I'm going to show them
Yeah.
I can do this. And then my therapist said, but at what cost?
At what cost? Yeah.
And I'm like, but, and my husband said, no, Cal.
Yeah.
And my kids, they said, Mom, we're really proud of you for standing up, because you chose yourself.
That's it.
And you haven't been. And I didn't even recognize myself,
That's what happens, yeah.
because I stopped, I know things in my industry, and I would bring them up and they'd be downplayed. or it would be read as I was being I don't even, so many adjectives that were put to it.
Yeah.
So I stopped saying anything on conference calls.
Right.
Stopped saying stuff. They asked me questions. I don't know. What do you think?
It
I just
literally
stopped.
was like, damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right. So I just stopped, and I didn't recognize myself. I'm like, who is this person?
Yeah. It really is a denigration of your humanity and your soul. I'll never forget the moment when I told my husband, because I said, I don't know what else to do. Do I need to bring in extra muffins, tomorrow morning? I mean, I'm like, do I need to bring in cookies, donuts from Long's? Like, I was trying to figure out, what is it that I'm not doing? Why am I not getting access to the photographers that I need? Why are my stories not being aired? Why am I being lied to about why my stories aren't being aired when you're telling me something that doesn't make sense? And I challenge you and say that doesn't make sense, and you're still trying to lie and gaslight. What is it that I'm doing? Because I don't see you treating anybody else like this. So you begin to question about yourself. And that begins the roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster of, it's me, it's me, it's me. I need to change myself. I need to do something so that this doesn't happen. And we're spinning in wheels. We're like the little hamster in the little wheel. You're just going around and around and around, and we can't stop. And your mind, your mind is literally being affected in a way that I had never experienced in my entire life. Never experienced. I couldn't get off. I couldn't get off. And that one night I just said, I need to go talk to someone because I don't know what else to do here. I need to figure out, is this just me? When you had those conversations with your therapist, what did she say to make you really, at that moment, I know she used the word abuse, but how long did it take for you to realize that it wasn't you? That this was bigger than you?
It took a little bit.
It took a little bit, yeah.
Because, like we were talking before this, I'm a perfectionist. And it's like, okay, I think in my head, I'm in bed and I'm thinking, well, what should I have done different? What could I have done different?
Yeah.
Well, if I would, no, but I did this, and I double checked and I did this. And I was like that with my therapist too. And she would just let me do my thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm one where I'm going to have that light bulb myself, be like, oh,
Yeah.
Because if you tell me, and yeah, okay,
gotta
but
click for
inside
you.
I'm like,
Yeah.
no. But it took a while because, one, I felt like, well, first I said, you know what, but I'm the only constant at all of these places. And I'm experiencing the same similar things. So that has to mean that it's me, because I'm the only constant here. And I've always wanted to look at myself first before anything, anyone else. If something goes awry, okay, Kelly, what did you do?
Yeah,
what
let me
could
look at
you
the
have
woman in
done?
the mirror.
Right, exactly. And so it was hard.
Yeah.
And it's still hard to even say it, that that I was bullied, that I was abused. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
All I wanted to do
It's my job.
was to do my best
Yeah.
and to do my job. Why wasn't that good enough?
Yeah.
And I told you it wasn't, I saw a taping that you did with your dad about the book. And it may not have even been the exact words that he said, but it was something clicked then. And I realized it was you, Kelly, but it wasn't anything negative. It was because of your excellence.
Exactly. Yes.
That's why. That's why. And I would get that I was intimidating. People say, oh, Kelly, when you walk into a room, you intimidate people. I'm like, me?
You're like, that's not how I see myself.
Introvert.
Yes,
I'm
because I'm an introvert too, believe it or not.
Introvert me. I'm introvert, but when you get me talking about clinical research,
Right,
whatever,
then you're on.
it's like,
Right.
it's like somebody else takes
the light bulb
over,
comes
right?
on.
But I'm like, really? And they're like, the way you dress, just, the way you dress, the way you carry yourself. I'm
He was
like,
In you, though.
I'm just being myself.
I'm like, I'm
being
just
myself.
walking. I'm just walking in, and they're, you don't realize,
Oh,
you know, and it just, I'd go other places, and then they're like, when you walk into a room, just, you don't see the looks. My husband would say, you don't see how they looked at you? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
like, no, I'm walking into
Focus
a room.
and walking into a
Right.
room, yeah.
Yeah. And,
There's a presence. You know, it's so funny because I had a colleague of mine from 13 who said, don't you realize when you walk into the newsroom, you're like you're parting the scene. And I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, Andrea, he goes, when you walk in, it's like everybody gets straight and they start, you know, doing right. And I'm like, I'm just walking in the room.
Exactly.
So I don't understand what other people see. But what I do know about myself, because my mom and dad raised my sister and I to be confident women, and maybe there is a little perfectionism in us because as black women and men,
That's right.
we have to be on point. We have to be a level higher. So when someone, which meaning the people in my case, were saying, well, as an excuse during the depositions, well, you know, Andrea was coming to work and prepared. And I was like, no, wait a minute. What you're not going to do is talk about my work ethic, because my work ethic is always better than your best. You think you're good, I'm always going to be better than your best. So let's be very, very clear. And that to me was the realization that I was in a losing situation and I was never going to be able to change their minds. And that's not my job. If you don't want to accept me for who I am so that I can show up as my authentic self, and for you to do your work so that you don't feel intimidated or threatened, that's on you. That's not on me. That's your work, not my job. They're intimidated by the excellence, by your excellence. And yet it still hurts.
oh, yeah.
It still hurts. Like, we know that intellectually. We know it intellectually. But it still hurts.
Because I feel like I'm like, I lost.
Yes, it feels
I'm
like
like
you
they
lost.
beat me.
I said the same thing. I was like, they won.
Yes.
They won. And my husband was
Yeah.
like, no, they didn't win.
And then
but
my son said, he's like,
Yeah.
no, Mom, you won.
You won.
Because you chose yourself. What really hit me was one day my son is, he's 6'6". He's really strong voice, thin guy. So he stands out.
Yeah.
And very confident. And so he was working remotely for a major company, and he was telling me about how they would gaslight and this and that. And then, you know, this Gen Z, they'll leave a job without having one. And so,
That's true.
you know, so I'm like, he's like, Mom,
He's like, I'm going to be fine.
I'm going to be done. And I'm like, whoa, no.
Yeah.
You don't have a job. He's like, I have savings. I'll be all right. I can contract whatever. I'm like, okay. And then he told me, he's like, Mom, he said I was the only person of color. They were gaslighting me. I didn't even know what gaslighting was
I didn't
until very recently. I had to ask my kids, can you explain it to me?
What is that?
What is it? And so he said, you know, Mom, he said, all these years, he said, I've grown with
They've watched.
knowing
and
you,
seen it.
you know, in
Yeah.
your job. And I would wonder, well, gosh, what is Mom doing? It has to be Mom. He said, I didn't understand until now.
Wow.
He said, it wasn't you. He said, they were doing it to me.
Yeah. It's a system.
Yeah, it's a system. And he's intimidating just because of his size, because of his presence. He's bilingual. Oh, my son is all that.
He's all that. I love it.
And people are intimidated.
Yeah. You know what's interesting, as you're talking about my son is 6'5", sophomore in high school, and he goes running in Florida. You know, he's like, Mom, I'm going to go for a run. And I'm like, okay.
Yes.
Let me know where you're going to be.
Oh, my gosh.
I need to, you know, let's put on the location. I need to make sure that, you know, you're going to go where you're going to go, where you say you're going to go. I need to make sure, because I mean, he's like, oh, but Mom, it's not. I'm like, honey, we're in Florida. We're in America.
Right.
We're in this world where black men, I said, you're a young boy. I said, but you look like a man, and you're a black young man, and I want to make sure that you come home alive. How has your experience with workplace bullying affect your family? Because I know for my son, I didn't know. I thought that we were protecting him. He would hear conversations. He would hear my husband and I talk about it. He would see me crying sometimes, and I would just say, I'm okay, Mom, it's all right. But as much as I thought we were protecting him, he saw, he heard, he felt my pain. And I'll share that a little bit more, but how did that affect you and your family?
My husband, while he was typical man, I can't fix it. I don't know what to do. So he would just listen. My youngest daughter, I think she was too young to see it from the when it started. My eldest daughter, who right now is working on her PhD in Kentucky, I praise God for what I went through because she went through it in academia. My daughter has always made straight A's. And that's not an exaggeration, always. She's just like uber stupid smart. And she had a mentor. She was working on her master's. Now, she got a full ride for her master's and her PhD.
Wow.
And they came to her
Wow.
and asked her, will you come to our school? And her mentor was a Caucasian man. He never gave her any props for anything. And again, my daughter, all my kids, they are that.
Yeah.
When in their specialty, they are that person. She developed abstracts. People were looking at her abstracts at conventions and said, you know what, I can see this on the front page of the New York Times.
Wow.
You're onto something. Wow. And then it just got so bad for her because he was expecting her to do things that other students in the master's program, they're like, really? My mentor doesn't require that of me. So she reported him. And so I said, and I call her Swiss, her name is Caitlin. I said, Swiss, I am so proud of you. And she would come to me, and, Mom, well, he's doing this. I said, oh, no. I said, let me tell you something. And then I met the man one time.
Oh. The truth. Yeah, yeah. You see for yourself.
You know how you throw shade without saying a word?
Without saying a word. You could just do a little look.
Yeah. He knew who I was.
He knew.
And I'm not as smart as my daughter, but I understood something, so I can communicate with him. Oh, he was nervous. Yeah. And I told her, after I saw him, I said, oh, no.
You knew. Yeah.
I said,
yeah.
You
yeah.
do not let this man knock you down. I said, they came to you to ask you to come to their school. That should tell you, because she had imposter syndrome. Well, what if? Yeah. I said, no. Yeah. You know, what you know, and you're in science.
Yeah.
It shows it right there, black and white. You know, you're doing the research. It's coming out. You're doing the testing and the hard, procedures and this and that, and they're working. No one can take that from you. Yeah. So he said that he thought it was best that she leave his lab.
Wow.
Now, this is right before she goes to defend her master's. So he said, she can stay in my lab until she's done with her master's, but she's going to have to find another lab for her PhD. After all this time, all this research, and research that he could not make successful, she came in, well, let's look at it this way. And it just
made sense. Yeah, she made it make sense.
And they're like, wow. She had to leave it all behind. She's in a lab now, though, working on her PhD, but she had to start from scratch. But I feel like if I hadn't gone through the things I had gone through, one, I wouldn't have known what to say to her, how to advise her. And again, she had documentation. She had it all. And, but the school didn't handle it correctly. But she continued. Even while she's working on her PhD, she, I think, spoke with someone. They were like, no, this wasn't handled correctly. Yeah. We're going to have to do something about this.
How was your situation handled? Same thing scenario where you explained, you had information, you had facts?
I never reported it until somewhat recently. But whenever I did report it, well, we take this seriously. We're going to seek outside counsel. I had, again, emails, text, you name it. I had it, provided it.
You're like, here's the evidence.
And then the lead, I guess, attorney was a woman of color, and then there was a Caucasian man. And so they were talking to me. And then, make a long story short, we'd have conversations, they tried to attack my work. And I'm like, oh, no.
Right.
We're not going to go there, because when I left, you needed 5 people to do my job that I was doing by myself.
Wow.
Okay? And I said, what happened? The outcome. I'm like, where's the report? Because it's, months. And they finally, they didn't give it to me. They never gave me the report, but said, oh, well, we just think you should come to the corporate office to interact with your study team, to develop relationships with them. I said, and my manager?
Right.
The one who was bullying me? Oh, well, yeah, you just need to work on your relationship.
Wow.
That's it.
That was it. How many of you all have ever gone to your HR department? And I tell people now, call me naive. I probably was very naive. I was naive. And I was naive when I look back on it now. It's because I really believe, I always give everyone the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume that we're all going to be on the same page of right, what's good and right and just and fair and equitable. So if I'm coming to the table thinking that about myself, because that's what I'm bringing to the table, I'm assuming that you as well are going to have the same kind of mentality. Call me naive, but that's how I've always operated until you show me otherwise. And I just assumed that every time I was going to HR, that she was, recording the information. She looked like she was writing stuff down. I thought it was going into my file. I thought that, now I have evidence. Let's talk about this. What are you guys going to do? And there was never any level of accountability. And so now I've been very outspoken. I tell people, I'm like, if you're in human resources, if this isn't you, if this is not who you are, then that's great. But 9 times out of 10, HR is not your friend. HR is not your friend. Use them to onboard, leave the company, ask, 401k, maybe disability information, FMLA, whatever, but they're not your friend. They are there for the company. They're there for the company. They're there to protect the company. And I realized that during my investigation, that there really was no investigation. There was no investigation.
Probably.
You claimed there was. You were like, well, we talked to this person and we talked to that person. And of course, I already knew that she was going to tell me that they denied it and so on and so forth. And again, the question is, well, why did you believe, the other people, but you didn't believe me and my witnesses? Why not? Why didn't you? But HR is not your friend. HR is not your friend. And that's one of the things that we're working on in workplace abuse. One of the main components of the bill is to make sure that HR departments and companies across this country are not allowed to be part of the investigation. There must be a separate investigative process, which is what I have been saying all along. Before I even knew about EWA, I'm like, if I had been able to have like an outside company to come in.
More of Kelly's story in part 2, and the audience opens up about their experiences and how to end the legacy of workplace trauma.